Welcome everybody to week 2, day 2 of IS 50A. We'll be continuing our discussion of materials today. And we'll also talk a little bit more about game design. Hopefully all of you were able to complete the homework, with the homework being to play a game. Hopefully that wasn't too onerous a requirement on you. Does anyone have like a cool game they've never played before, they want to share? Just talk about a little bit on Discord. Last semester I assigned everybody, we do this a couple times a semester. A couple semesters ago I had everybody do Wargame Red Dragon, which is an interesting take on the real-time strategy genre. It's not a very good game, but it's interesting. It was worth playing. I played a lame game just to see what the hype was about. What did you play, Hazelton? Dota? Hades didn't notice the time started at 4, ended at 2 a.m. Yeah, Hades will do that. Hades is a very, very solid game. It's quite a good game. Alright, so we got a couple of free games we can do. Void Bastards. Interesting. It looks like FTL a little bit. Alright. I did Star Renegades, a roguelike. Among Us. Yeah, Among Us is a bit of a weird game. My daughter actually asked me yesterday, like, why Among Us is so popular. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, none of my friends and I have played it in like 6 months or something. Yeah, around then. Yeah. But apparently in 4th graders, like, Among Us is still pretty popular. What do we have here? This looks like a Spyro the Dragon clone or something. Yeah, so what did you think, Hazelton? What was the... Void Bastards is a Doom-like roguelike. That sounds cool. Hades is a wonderful roguelike. It's done best for slowly rolling out each element each run. Yeah. Now you will run out of elements. Like that's the downside to Hades, is that you sort of hit a point where there's kind of nothing new except for when you're just collecting Titan blood, and it's just a really long slog even to fully upgrade one weapon, and then you need to switch weapons, of course. Yeah, it becomes super grindy towards the end, and it gets harder and harder, and your progression slows down. It's not a very fun combo for me, so I kind of gave up before like fully beating the game. Heat system makes it fun after runs, a good challenge. Yeah, I mean the game was hard enough as it was, and then you just start slapping on more and more modifiers onto it. Yeah. Half the time I didn't know why I was running around doing tasks. Yeah, the whole point was you just run around doing tasks, and you're just trying to fill up that bar. Each human needs to complete all their tasks. If they do that, the humans win. And then the aliens, of course, take the opportunity of people walking around doing tasks to murder them, and then when you discover the corpse, then you call a meeting, and everyone, like, points fingers at each other, and you were playing The Last Campfire. I've never heard of that. What is The Last Campfire about? But the thing is, like, there's some pretty degenerate strategies you can do as humans. If everybody just walks around together, like, the aliens can't murder anybody. And so I played a number of games where, like, everyone's like, alright, we'll just walk around in a group. There's no timer on completing the tasks, or there wasn't when I played. I don't know if they added one. So everybody just walks around in a group, and if anybody gets murdered, you see it. And so it becomes very sort of tedious. Also, The Last Campfire. Interesting. What is this supposed to be? Oh, it's the No Man's Sky people. Interesting. I don't feel like I really understand what this game's about. You want to explain it? I like playing Mafia and Town of Salem social deduction games. Yeah, Among Us is definitely in that genre, for sure. Somebody trying to friend me. Yeah, I did share that. Is all solving puzzles through the game. I see. Okay. Alright. Puzzle adventure game. For the survey filled out on the link is supposed to put it somewhere else or something. Star Renegades is a roguelike RPG. Let's take a look at Star Renegades. Renegade. Renegade. Star Renegades. There we go. Okay. Turn-based RPG roguelike. Okay. For the survey, I filled it out on the link. Was I supposed to put it somewhere else or something? I don't know what you're asking, Selkie. Had interesting mitigate. Yeah, it does look interesting. Okay, I'll maybe wishlist that one. Okay. All right. So, what game did I play? I played Humankind a little bit. Not enough. I really need to make more time to play games. I'm being a terrible professor. I'm spending all my time studying how to make games instead of playing games. So, Humankind is an interesting take on Civ. It's very similar to that company's other games. If you played those, there's the FIDS system. No, that's not it. Endless. That's what I was thinking. So if you like roguelikes, because you're telling me about those other 3 roguelikes, Hades and I guess Void Bastards is roguelike, and Star Renegades. Humankind compares to Civ because yeah. So Endless Dungeon is a roguelike, and it sort of creates a random dungeon, and you wait. Is this it? No. Is that? It's not out yet. What am I thinking of then? How is that not out? Dungeon of the Endless. It's not Endless Dungeon. It's Dungeon of the Endless. Okay, alright. There you go. Endless Dungeon and Dungeon of the Endless. Totally different games by the same studio. Fantastic. That's exactly what I want to see when I'm naming things. Okay, so yeah, here's what it looks like. So you basically move from room to room. The rooms are procedurally generated. You get random weapons, random upgrades, you level up, things like that. And you clear the dungeons, and you go through level after level. They get harder. It's pretty good. I would say it's pretty good. I'm kind of a fan of Amplitude Studios. They've done a lot of good things. Endless Legend's good. Endless Space is good. Dungeon of the Endless. I'm not really a huge fan of the genre, but I played it a fair bit. Endless Space 2 is a fantastic 4X game. So if you've played any, that's the tech tree. See, you can customize your ships pretty well. Let's see if we can get a shot of the galaxy map. It's a land invasion. Really, they have no shots of the galaxy. It's a solar system. Where's the galaxy? Just have no shots of it. It's utterly useless. Anyhow, so it's one of these space 4X games where really? Just no shots. There we go. Yeah. That's all I'm looking for. So you have solar systems connected by jump lanes, and your ships will, jump from one to the other and things like that, and you conquer the galaxy basically. But what makes Endless Space 2 good is that the civilizations are actually really unique. The one that I was playing as recently, you can play an entire civilization of hackers, And so you're literally invisible. Like, nobody sees you on the world map unless they research radar technology, then you appear, which is bad for you because you probably don't have any ships because you're invisible most of the time. And we talked about player interaction. Maybe we'll talk more about player interaction because this is a good example of it. So normally, higher player interaction is better. It's one of the things we talk about in our PowerPoint presentation on game design principles, is the concept of player interaction. Like, how much do players interact with each other in a game? So, sometimes they're positive interactions. Like in Pokemon, you can trade with each other, or they can be negative, like when you battle each other over gyms. Is it competitive? Is it cooperative? Is it both? Neither? I don't know, it could be neither, but one person can win, no people can win, all people can win. But in general, higher player interaction is better in a game. It's usually pretty boring when everybody's in a game, but they can't really affect each other very much. That's usually a boring game. For example, there's a game called Welcome To, where you can have 100 people playing the game at once. Why? Because they don't interact with each other. It's like a more complicated form of bingo. So I've done this in this class with 30 people playing it. I put up on the projector in class the 3 cards that are available, and people pick one of the 3 cards and they write down the number, and they're kind of trying to fill out a bingo sheet, kind of using the numbers that are put up there. And there's some strategy and there's some, luck involved and stuff like that. But basically, at the end of the game, people tally up their points, and that's it. Whoever wins, wins. The only interaction there is in that entire game is that there's 3 different achievements you can get for bonus points, and whoever gets it first gets more points than anybody else that gets it. So, for example, if you're the first person to complete 5 in a row or something, then you get 7 points, and if anybody does it after that, they get 4 points. Something like that. So that's the only player interaction in that entire game, and it makes the game kind of boring. But it's one of the few board games that supports 30 players or 100 players, right? There's not a lot of board games for classrooms, and that's something that actually bugs me. There's not a lot of video games for classrooms. Like, if you think about it, single-player games are weird for player interaction. Yeah, the whole player interaction thing doesn't really apply to single-player games. This is multiplayer, right? And so if you're in a board game that has low player interaction, that's usually a boring game. And there's also a question of downtime. Downtime is how long. Let's see if I have a slide on that. Downtime is how long you sit around between turns, right? So if it's somebody else's turn and you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, it gets quite boring. And some games have a really serious problem with long downtime. For example, in Dungeons and Dragons, if you're a player, you can go an hour between your turns in combat. I've had that happen before, and it is very, very boring. I missed. You're next. Go. Gonna go get some coffee. I'll be back for my next attack. I missed again. All right, go. I'll go to the Starbucks again. Go to the library, get some books so I can read. Downtime is really boring. Downtime is, in general, a negative thing, but that applies in video games as well. If you die in Counter-Strike, what can you do? Anyone? It's worse with systems like Pathfinder. Yeah, and it really depends on on the Dungeon Master, right? The Dungeon Master really needs to be on top of the players. Be like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? You don't know? I'll come back to you. Skip. Right? I used to run what are called Dungeon Delves, which Wizards of the Coast, the people that make Dungeons and Dragons, they would actually pay for my admission to Comic-Con and give me a hotel at Comic-Con to run these things called Dungeon Delves. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. 3 combats. 3 combats in 15 minutes. And if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons before, you'll be like, that's impossible. There's an easy combat, a medium combat, and a hard combat. And most of the groups would clear the easy like that. Medium, sure. The hard combat, maybe a third of the groups would beat it. And then depending on how well they did in the Dungeon Delve, they would be given these poker chips, and then they could exchange the poker chips for stuffed dragons and things like that. And so it was like a draw at Comic-Con. So people could queue up, and they would sit down with a group of 4 to 6, and they would play through the dungeon delve and be given ships, and then they could go back to the end of the line and play it again. And we just had people coming through the Dungeons and Dragons booth, you know, not 24/7 because it's not open at night, but yeah, basically the entire con. And I am running combats, three combats in 15 minutes, 3 combats in 15 minutes, over and over again. It's very draining, but I got really, really good at managing downtime. Go, go, go. I need to look up a rule in the book. No, you don't. No, you don't. You got 15 minutes to do 3 combats. You are not looking up any rules in the books. Put the books away. I know the rules in my head. If you want a question, just ask me. You know, the wizard takes half an hour to cast a spell because he's sitting there like flipping through the rules. Like, what's the range on it? I'm like, it's a fireball. You have the range. It's a 20-foot radius. Just go. Just go. Just go. Can I? Yeah, you can. Go. Just go. Roll the dice. Go. Go. I don't have my dice ready. Okay, we'll get back to you. And then I skip. And so downtime in games like that, where there's a person that's running the game, it's really on the dungeon master in games like that to minimize downtime. But in games like in Counter-Strike, when you're dead, you're sitting there, right? And you're waiting for the match to end, and it's boring, right? So play deathmatch. Yeah, in deathmatch, you die, you come back to life. There's less downtime, right? And so in general, downtime is not a good feature, and more player interaction in general is a good feature. However, to come back to what I was saying with the endless space hacker race, what is it called? The Umbral Choir. You don't interact with the other players. You're playing a completely different game than the rest of the civilizations, and you would think, okay, that's going to be pretty boring, right? Like, I don't know. You know, here's a map of the galaxy. You're here. You're invisible. Other players, like normally in the game, like you send your space fleets out and you blow up their space fleets and conquer their planets and all this kind of stuff, and or you trade with them if you want to cooperate. The Umbral Choir is just invisible. Like, you can colonize planets where they have colonies. You can colonize planets, and your people are just there invisible, and nobody can see you unless they research radar. And radar is fairly deep in the tech tree, and you can get cloaking faster than they can get radar. So if you get cloaking, the radar won't detect you, and then there's cloaking 2 and radar 2 and cloaking 3 and and so as long as you stay ahead of people on the tech tree, they will just never see you. Your people are invisible, your colonies are invisible, your spaceships are all invisible. Like, you just don't, you're playing a different game. And they made it work. They made it work really well. The only way that you interact with other civilizations is through the hacking interface. And so all civilizations have hacking, you're just better at it than them. And so it's a really fascinating thing. It forces people to, like, if they keep getting hacked and you're like abducting their citizens and things like that, they can start going hardcore into hacking and start tracing your connections and locating your planets. And once they locate you, they can purge you pretty fast because you're hackers. You probably haven't built a military because you don't need it. You're invisible most of the time. And so it creates this really interesting thing where, like, all the other civilizations are like investing heavily into giant battleships and things like that. But if they do, you're going to keep hacking them and stealing their resources and stealing their money and stealing their people. But if they go into hacking to defeat you and find you and crush you, then their military is not going to be as big, and the other civilizations will crush them and destroy them. And so it's the way that it works out is just a really well made game. And so, like I said, Amplitude Studios has impressed me over the years. Humankind, I have not played enough of. I really need to play more of Humankind. And the Umbral Choir is just one civilization out of many that they have, and they feel different. They feel like very different game experiences. They actually did a really good job making that game. So that's you and Munchkin. Amplitude has a lot of interesting games under their belt. Yeah. I wouldn't call myself a fanboy necessarily, but yeah, I dig it. And they've got this sort of system. Yeah, so there's food, industry, dust, science, These are the four, and then there's influence as well. These are the four resources that they've sort of generalized across all their games. Food gives you more people. Industry gives you more production. You can build more things. Money is obviously money. And science gives you more research. And so balancing these four elements, and then some of the games add influence as well. Then that they use that sort of core mechanic in all of their games. And so it's kind of neat to see like them taking, you know, these general concepts, making a general system out of it, and then implementing it in a, you know, fantasy world, in a space world, in a roguelike. You know, it's kind of neat. Okay, so yeah, downtime, and most of them have a shared universe. I know Dungeon of the Endless is a prequel to Endless Legend. Yes, Dungeon of the Endless, you crash land on a planet basically, and you're trying to like repair your ship, kind of. Yeah, so downtime in general bad, but you know, some games require it, right? Like Counter-Strike would be very different if you could just come back to life, right? Another really big question is, how do you handle people of different skill levels? Have you guys ever played ranked? Does anyone here ever play like a ranked game in any game? Overwatch, League, ranked League of Legends. What do you? So the whole point of ranking, right, is that it tries to pair you with people of equal skill level. How well do you think that Hearthstone? Yeah, how well do you think that system works, Hazelton, in League of Legends? Torres, how did the ranked system work in Hearthstone? I assiduously avoid ranked. It's too stressful for me. I don't want the system judging me. The closest I've played to playing ranked was in Heroes of the Storm. Anytime you form a group in Heroes of the Storm, it behind the scenes gives you a ELO rating. An ELO rating is your relative strength in a game. Higher the ELO rating, the stronger a player you are. It's an attempt to try to figure out how strong you are, and if you get better, your ELO will go up over time in an ideal world. There's still Smurfs, which are higher ranks with a new account. Yeah, they start over and then they just crush people, right? You have to just dedicate a lot of time to ascend the ranked mode. Yeah, and that was something that really turned me off on World of Warcraft. Was they implemented a ranking system, and you had to play a certain amount of hours a week to maintain your rank, and you had to play even more hours to go up in rank. And every rank you went up, the number of hours went up also. And so it got to the point where I would like be playing WoW like every chance I could, because otherwise I'd go down a rank, you know, and I didn't want to lose my rank, you know. It was a really brutal system, because when you start off on it, you just play a couple games a week, and you just keep leveling up, and then after a while it forms this really brutal hierarchy where in order to go up you have to play more hours than the other people in your rank. And when you start getting to the very competitive zones, like people are playing it 24/7, like literally 24/7, not like figuratively 24, literally 24/7. They will have people hot swapping out the accounts, you know, to get the highest ranks, and they eventually did away with that whole system, probably because it was so unhealthy. But that was the reason I quit World of Warcraft, was because it was so brutal, you know. And once you've poured all of that time into it. Like, you can't just quit, because if you or just play an hour or two a week for fun, because then you lose all of that progress you've made, that you've come so far for. It just, every week you go down a tier, and you're like, that was 2 weeks of work, that was 3 weeks of work, that was 4 weeks of work. You know, it was a mean, cruel system, very manipulative. Now no one plays WoW. Yeah, I quit a long time ago. And then a friend bought me Wrath of the Lich King, so I went back and played for that. I'm like, thanks, dude. It's like giving drugs to somebody that was clean, you know. But I went through and played through the single player in Wrath of the Lich King, and then quit again. There's a problem where players play the game for 10 years and knows everything. Yeah, and a new player knows nothing's in the same rank. Torres, you had to deal with the meta deck Yeah. I used to love WoW. Yeah, their original ranking system for PvP was honestly one of the most brilliant / evil things I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you want people to play your game, like, you couldn't it just would trap people in it, and then they would just have to play it more and more and more, or lose, like, because you would lose your progress, and so you skip a week, you drop a rank, now you've got to work 3 weeks to get back up to the rank you were before, playing 40 hours a week, and then once you're in that one, now you got to play 50 hours a week. Then to get up to the next one, you have to play 60 hours a week, and you got a job and things like that. It was not moral. My lord. Huh. Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne, yeah, League of Legends and WoW Vanilla. Yeah, a lot of people preferred WoW Vanilla over what they ended up turning WoW into, which was this dumbed down, simplified mess. And so they eventually re-released Vanilla because people preferred that over the sort of distilled boringness of later WoW. Single players the most. Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2 has an online thing that's full of cheaters. It's horrible. It's beautiful. It's horrible. You just get teleported to a spot and a guy shoots you and you're like, what? Red Dead Redemption 2 online is like one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. WoW right now is Hero Theme Park. Yeah. No, our Rdr 2 is a fantastic single player game. One of the most beautiful games I've ever seen in my life. And playing it with HDR mode on, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. Yeah, so ELO systems are hard to get right. Handicapping, better players, ELO systems, doing matchmaking, these are all things that are actually just really, really tough to do correctly. And even if you do them correctly, you still have smurfing and things like that, where, people will, sandbag themselves to drop their ELO. And how do you handle that, right? Like, if somebody's, like, deliberately playing badly, like, how do you detect that? Like, I don't even know if there's a good answer to that, get somebody's driver's license, if you want to play. I don't know. So, yeah, and Heroes of the Storm, it would secretly give you an ELO. And I like secret ELOs better than published ELOs, because then I don't feel bad when I lose as much, But, like, every time you formed a group in Heroes of the Storm, it would try to estimate the ELO of the group and match you against another group with the same ELO. And it was kind of funny, because, like, you start off and you're just, like, dominating people. Then all of a sudden you start getting paired with pre-made groups that have been playing together since they were born, and they start crushing you, and you're like, oh, I guess the game thinks we're pretty good now, Stop finding game player's friend lose 100 matches to mess up his ranking. Yeah, and how do you handle that? It's like, cheat menu for RDR too. Yeah. In League, there was someone who was playing a different champion and lost every game, so you can have the best win rate on a different champion. Ooh, yeah. So Heroes of the Storm maintained an ELO for each of your different characters. So if you were really good with Asmodean but really bad at I don't know, Varian or something like that, then it would sort of track your ELO separately. And then I think they did like role ELO, or like your healer ELO sort of aggregate and things like that. But yeah, that's a clever exploit. You just tank all of your performance on all of the things. You keep getting put into really bad games, and then you play your favorite hero, and you have a 100% win rate or something like that. So that's quite funny. They don't ban hackers even with proof, because they're usually dummy accounts, or because anti-cheat's super easy to bypass. Plus they stop caring. Kearney probably knows why would they get along for so long. No, you gotta ban people. Like, that's, there's some really interesting research on bans, and how if you allow toxic people into a community, like the toxicity spreads. Look at Riot Software. WoW. Somebody's a toxic person in the game, then it spreads toxicity, and cheaters in RDR 2 online, eventually people just stop taking the game seriously, right? Like, how many times can you be teleported to one spot and killed with, instantaneously, Then after a while you're just like, I don't care about this game anymore. And then maybe you either quit, which is what I did, or maybe you download the cheats yourself, and then and then it just spreads like a virus through the server. And the correct answer is, of course, is to make a client-server architecture that doesn't allow cheats, right? So that was, yeah, bad game design on their part. Yeah. Rainbow Six Siege is dead because of cheaters in a toxic community. Yeah, you really have to clamp that stuff down. Or, you know, the good players are just like, all right, there's plenty of other games I could be playing right now. You know? Like, how many times do I need to be told that I suck in Heroes of the Storm before I quit? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm pretty good at Butcher, but I'm having a bad day right now, alright? I'm having a bad day, it's not working. Don't know what to tell you. You telling me I suck isn't helping. It's really not helping right now. I understand that I'm dying. I'm frustrated too. You know, you're just making it worse. And so what happens is that the toxic players and cheaters drive out the good players. The good players are like, well, fine, I'll just play another game, you know? And then the whole thing becomes a cesspool. And the WoW community, for years, was famous for being a cesspool. Like, if you go on the forums, the WoW community forums, like back in the vanilla days, like somebody would say, hey, I've got this idea. I think that the way that stealth works is kind of weird. Because the way that stealth worked in WoW was it would roll a die every couple seconds, and then you would either be spotted or not. And so if you're like sneaking up on somebody, whoom, you appear for a second, whoom, you disappear, and it's just kind of a weird system. And so somebody would probably post an essay on, yeah, you know, I think there could be a different way for handling stealth, you know, that isn't RNG based. And then people would just be like, shut up, noob. I checked your profile. You're only level 55. You can't comment on this game until you're level 60. You know, and people do that in you know, any forum where your profile is visible and it shows your level or your win rate or your elo. They'll just flat out dismiss you if you don't have, you know, god tier stats. You know, and if you do, they probably still will dismiss you because the communities are that toxic and hostile. So Rdr Online, never played it. No way it's a single-player game. And on PC, you can get rid of the online menu. Yeah, no, I actually started playing Red Dead Redemption 2 online because it's $5. And it's the same game as the single-player, except it's $5. And I was like, all right. You know, I've heard good things about the graphics in this game. I'll play. And a friend of mine in Japan was playing it. So it was an opportunity to play with a friend of mine in Japan. And we'd ride horses together and do missions and things like that. And look at the beautiful world for $5. It was a good price. And then, you know, people would start teleporting us, and, you know, there's voice chats turned on by default in the game. So when I'm talking to my friend, like, hey, do you want to, you know, how's life in Japan right now? Somebody riding by will hear us saying that, and, you know, and they'll just talk back at us, and kind of a weird choice, you know, for just turn on the microphone for everybody in an online world. You know, does that lend itself to toxicity and trolling? Yeah, it does. You know, yeah, like you don't even, like you're just talking to your friend and just people can overhear you. Like you're out there hunting an alligator or something and people walk by and eavesdrop on your conversation, which is a weird decision they made, you know? You don't have a 4 to kill to death ratio, yeah. Quickest way to kill the game. Yeah, so, you know, I played it because I wanted to see the graphics of Red Dead Redemption without dropping $60, you know what I mean? And eventually I got tired of the stupid cheating on Red Dead Redemption 2, so I bought the single-player game and played that a little bit. Wasn't actually... what's the right word? I wasn't surprised by the game. Let's put it that way. It's basically exactly the game that I thought it would be. Which is a weird criticism, because it's a beautiful game, and I expected it to be beautiful. I don't know. Okay, so, you can always die, yeah. Titanfall hacker doing massive DDoS attacks and back out. Actively screwing over Titanfall 2 and Apex. Yeah, it's a big problem. And, MMOs are especially bad because, again, toxicity spreads like a virus. And, you know, I was listening to this one woman give a talk on sort of the harassment that women have in online environments. And so doing things like forcing voice chat to be on by default is like, everyone's like, oh, it's a woman. What? Women play video games? Yeah. And I think there's a TED Talk on it that I was probably watching. And she said that she worked as like a community manager, I think at either WoW or like one of the big MMOs. She said that one design metric they had in a game was called TTP. TFT servers are back up now. I read chat in games from my wife. She turns off chat in all games. Yeah. And so like Red Dead Redemption enabling voice chat by default is like, really? You got to think about that. These are all things you guys just, when you go into industry, which hopefully some of you will, just think about it a little bit. And so this woman, she said, that was giving the talk that I was listening to, she said one of the goals that she has when designing a new online game is to try to eliminate the ability of players to draw penises in the game. She says, we have a metric called TTP, which is the time to penis, which is the amount of time from when a server is launched until players put the first penis in the game. And so if you allow custom spray paint cans, guess what happens? You know what I mean? Like, and so they came up, maybe it was like an Animal Planet or something like that, where there's like you don't have the ability to even type things, you have to like select from a menu of things you can say, and they're all like positive and waving and things like that. And so she's like, all right, we were pretty happy. Like, we're like, there's no way that anyone could draw a penis in the game. And then people, within 5 minutes, there was the first penis. How? They took boxes and they put it in the shape of a penis. And she's like, damn it, because they structured the entire, chat system to be less toxic. And she's like, so, Counter-Strike sprays, like, anybody who thought it would be a great idea to allow people to just upload images and spray them on walls in a shared environment, it's like Invincible meme, right? What are you thinking? Right? You know what I'm saying? This one, yeah. Like, what were you thinking, Counter-Strike? What were you thinking? All right. We'll just let people upload any image they want and put it on a wall in a shared environment. It's like, yeah. Okay, so that's enough about multiplayer today. Downtime in general bad. Sometimes you need it for games like Counter-Strike, Battle Royale. Battle Royale would not work if you could respawn, right? Because there needs to be one survivor out of the 100. So, and then player interaction in general is better. But, like I said, with that Amplitude Studios game Endless Space 2, sometimes restricting interaction can actually make for interesting game decisions. Okay, so let's, that's my spiel on multiplayer. And it's hard. It's really hard to do multiplayer. Well, because if you're worse than the other person, you're going to lose all the time. It's one of those things where, like, if somebody's like 30% better than you, you don't win 30% of the time. You win close to 0% of the time. Because if let's say they land 30% more shots, you're just going to lose over and over again. And it's not fun. And so one approach, last thing, and then I'll go to Unreal Engine, is the approach at games like Overwatch and Team Fortress. But I repeat myself, do is that they give you different roles to play, right? So if you're not good at single pixel precision sniping, which you need in some games for sniping, you have to be very, very precise, be able to move your mouse across the screen and hit exactly the right pixel at the right time. If you can't do that, give them options other than sniping, right? So if you look at like Mercy in Overwatch, she's got, or the medic in TF2, but I repeat myself, they have like a medic gun or a medic staff or whatever, and you just have to point it kind of in the general direction of a fellow player and it heals them, right? You don't have to have pixel perfect accuracy. Symmetra, her original design, did not require you to be good at clicking exactly on players. You just kind of put your weapons somewhere in their general area and the energy leash will lash out and hit them, and then you just hold down attack and you just run around and they'll die eventually. Torbjorn in Overwatch or the engineer in Team Fortress, i.e. the same character, can build sentry guns. And so if you can't shoot with any accuracy, build a sentry gun, and the sentry gun can kill things for you. You guys understand? So it allows people to contribute and feel useful without requiring everybody to have the same skill levels. So some people with good tactical sense can hide sentry guns around corners and things like that and surprise people and stuff like that. So culture, yeah. Yeah, so that's one possible solution, right? The matchmaking systems, ELO systems, they kind of work. They're kind of okay. And they kind of just have these inescapable weaknesses in them that you just really can't get around without requiring like a DNA sample and a driver's license scan and all this other stuff. So my advice to you is that give people different things to do, right? So rather than requiring the same skill for everybody, if you have different skills that you can win with, then people could be better at one thing and worse at another thing. And it feels better that way. Everybody's different, you know. Everybody's got different skills and different desires and things they like to do in a game. You know, some people like picking flowers, some people like, you know, shooting people, some people like building walls and things like that. And so if you give people different things to do, then it tends to make them happier in a video game. Okay, so game design lecture over. Let's get into, where are we? Fall 2021. Okay. Yeah, I only played Horde in WoW, but we had like Baron's Chat, which was maybe the similar thing, which was just full of stupidity and also people asking where Mankirk's wife was. I wonder if this will work. I just found a website that has free textures on it, so I'm going to see if I can import them and make something out of it. Okay, alright. Seems to work. Okay, alright. So, yeah, let's try and do something with that. We're going to continue our talk on materials today, and we're gonna talk about using textures instead of just single things. Like right here, we've got a nose, and the nose matte is here. We're just using like basically just a solid color for the color, right? But you don't have to put in a solid color like I showed last time. You can actually use a 2D picture, which is called a texture. A texture is just a 2D image. There's nothing too crazy about textures, just 2D images. And if you apply a 2D image where the color is, rather than it applying a single uniform color around the whole thing, it will take this 2D picture and apply it around the whole thing. And how often it tiles and things like that, I'll show you in just 1 second. So I'm just going to detach this because I'm probably going to put it back as orange because it actually looks fine as orange. So I'm going to add a texture sample, and a texture sample is somewhere over here. Texture sample. Texture coordinate. That's maybe hidden. Let's see, T maybe. Yeah. If you hold down T and click, you get texture sample. Where is it? It's got to be in here somewhere. There's a lot of options. There we go. There's texture sample. So bring in a texture sample and hook up the RGB to the base color like that. And if you want, you just the red part of it, the green part of it, the blue part of it. But for a texture sample, it's going to be RG and B. And then over here, you can select a texture. And so a texture, again, is just a 2D picture. And so if I take a picture of like a brick or something like that, then you'll see that it wraps this picture of brick over and over again on the image. And if we save it, come out to here, you can see that the brick picture is wrapped around the cone as such. And it doesn't look too bad, actually, with what we have here. You can see the divots on it from the normal map. That's still there. That was left in. That looks pretty good. Normal maps are a great way of adding detail to a surface without needing more triangles. I actually found a shot of it. Let's see here. Baron's chat, not helpful at all. Yeah, it's infamous. I've never played as Alliance. I can't speak to it, but yeah, it was not what we'd call high quality text. Let's see here. View. Really? Where did I put it? There we go. Okay, so here is a picture of a guy's face. Really? Well done, Windows Photo Viewer. All right, let's try that again with a different image viewer. It's Irfan view, maybe. There we go. All right, so here we have a picture of a guy's face modeled in, I don't know, Maya or 3ds Max or something like that. And so they took the time, they used 6,272 polygons, maybe triangles, maybe something else, and they came up with a decent looking bust dude's face. And then they made a higher resolution version of it. They added some bumps and moles and warts and wrinkles and stuff like that. So this is 6 million polygons, which is not going to render too fast. You know what I mean? You're trying to raster 6.4 million triangles just for one object in the world. You're gonna blow through your triangle budget really fast. So what a very common thing to do is the artist will retain this. The artist will retain the high quality model on their computer in case they need to modify it at a later date. Like, I don't know, somebody's like, make the person frown a little more, and they could pull the eyebrows down a little bit or something like that. Is that from the free 11 gigabyte snowpack? No, I'll show you where I got that in a second. But you can do something called baking normals. So when you bake something, that's basically like hard coding into the surface. Like when you talk about baking shadows, the sun's here, the wall's here. You can pre-compute where the shadow is going to fall, and you can actually turn that area black in the world. You can actually apply like a texture map to it. It's called a shadow map, and it's baked in. So you don't have to compute where is the shadow volume going to fall and what does it intersect with. No, it's baked into the world. That chunk of land actually has the shadow on it. Like if I were to move this box here, you'll see, oh, this is a dynamic image. Never mind. All right. If I move this thing here, you'll see the shadow is baked into the world. You see that? So you can do the same sort of baking with a model as well with a normal map. So what's happening is that it's actually reducing the high res model down to a low res model, which is what, 10, 100, 1,000 times smaller. There's 1,000 times less triangles in this one than this one. But what's happening is that it's creating what's called a normal map. And the normal map holds at every point what direction the normal is, right? Normal is normally perpendicular to the surface. It's used for light reflecting off of it and things like that. If you mess with the normal, the light will bounce off in a different direction and give the appearance of depth. So you can see over here, I'll move this down a little bit. This is actually probably just a smooth surface like this, but it looks wrinkled. And what's happening is that these things were actually made with triangles, but by simply changing the direction that it reflects light, it appears as if you actually have a groove where there is no groove. That's actually a flat surface, but to our eye, it looks like it's wrinkled. Now, if you were to come up really close to it and look at it from the side, it would just look flat like this. The wrinkle would not actually go down into the surface, but from a distance, you really can't tell the difference. And this would be 1,000 times faster to render than this one. And you'd probably need to clean up the eyes. The eyes look a little bit horrific here. The bumps actually look a little bit better on this one. This one's kind of exaggerated. Yeah, so I'd probably want to clean up the eyes a little bit. Otherwise, this is 1,000 times faster than this one, and it looks pretty much the same. And the forehead wrinkles look pretty good. It's still a little bit too plasticky for my taste. Like a human shouldn't be plastic. You know what I'm saying? But what's happening is that it takes the high-res version, it figures out what direction each of these little divots is facing, and then it saves that into just a texture. It saves it into a texture that looks just like this right here. And that holds the direction that point is facing. Okay. Is baking exactly how it works in Blender? Yeah. You can bake things down like that. You can lower the triangle count, bake the normal map into it, and then it looks like you have a high-res map when you don't. Okay. So this thing here is called a normal map, and the normal map looks like these weird colors of like blues and reds and greens and things. And what it's actually holding is the X, Y, and Z direction that each point is holding. So every point on here, blue is like Z and X, Y, and Z, something like that. And so it's holding what direction that point is. And if we were to take the normal map for, which one was this? Brick. Here. Brick hewn stone, was that it? You'll see that, is that the same one? No, that's the actual texture, not the, we need brick hewn stone normal map. So rather than it looking flat, now look at that. It looks like the stones actually come up out of the surface. You see that? Just based on the way the light reflects off. This thing is still a perfect sphere, but it actually looks like it's 3D, right? And though it's a 2D surface, based on the light reflections, it actually looks pretty good. And then it looked like there were a couple other maps in there, so let's take a look at those. Brick hewn stone M, and that probably could be used for like the roughness. So each of these things, right now we've got like the shininess level set, and that applies to the entire surface. But if you use a texture sample, this is the key point for today. If you use a texture sample, rather than having a roughness of 0.4 for the whole thing, which is kind of shiny, like this, you can actually apply shininess to each point separately. So the brighter the values here, on this, the shinier that area is. So you can see the bricks are going to be shinier than the mortar in between. The mortar in between is a darker color. And in fact, if you look at this, you can see the bricks are reflecting light nicely. The mortar in between is sort of matte. It's sort of diffused lighting. It's not and the bricks themselves aren't really that shiny either. It's kind of toned down from what we had before. And we can feed that into specular and not roughness. No, it's a bit weird to do it like that. But yeah, so turn off roughness. There. And so you can see if we use this as a specular map, the bricks are nice and shiny, and the mortar in between is kind of shiny actually. So you can use any of these 2D maps like that to sort of build your own per pixel values. So rather than using one value for the whole thing, if you use a 2D map like this, you can have each pixel be shinier or rougher. You guys understand? And you can make it yourself if you're an artist. I'm not, so I always am looking for free art. Okay. Let's look at this up. So let's use a yellow base color, and this is just a yellow base color, but with a normal map, look at that. It looks like it's actually raised from the surface, and the mortar has an uneven surface there. That's all from the normal map here. It's actually looking like it's made out of orange bricks, but it's just a uniform orange color. And some areas are shinier, some areas are flatter. So it's pretty cool how that works out. All right. So let's make a material from scratch. Let's come over here. See how that nose is looking. There you go. It's got a brick nose. It's orange. Any questions about that so far? Basically, what we've learned today is that you can feed a 2D texture into any one of those inputs. It doesn't just have to be a constant value like orange. You can feed a 2D image into each one of them. How am I moving around so easily? I'm holding down right mouse click and then WASD. Okay. Yep. And E and Q rise up and sync down. I've got the camera speed turned down to the minimal value because I want to like zoom in and look at these things. Oh, look, it's clipping. This is called the near clipping plane. So the near clipping plane is actually getting rid of everything closer than a couple centimeters to the camera. Whoop, whoop. Okay. All right, so let's build a material from scratch. So I'm going to come in here and we'll just move these up a level. Really? You have to resave them all? Okay. Delete the textures folder. Delete the textures folder, please. Thank you. Okay, so I've got these 5 things here. Where did I get them from? I found them on a website right here called Polyhaven. So Polyhaven is a pretty cool site. It's got a bunch of free art assets in it. Public 3D asset library. Pretty cool stuff. Models, textures, and high definition rendering images that you can use for like backgrounds and things like that. Look pretty cool. So you can use this as your skybox, or whatever, or reflect it. Ooh, that's a cool one. I like that one. Has high definition, so it's got more brightness information, things like that, 10-bit color, that kind of stuff. So if you go in there and click on textures, click on browse textures, you can see that there's 226 free textures for you to use, and you can click on them and see what the thing looks like. 3D view. There again, click and look around at it. Okay, and then okay. Let me hide my face. Okay. So right here, you can click on that and it'll show you the different layers to it. So the diffuse layer is your color layer. Sometimes it's called albedo, sometimes it's called diffuse. In Unreal Engine, it's called base color. Okay, so if you click on the little eyeball here, you can click in and see what the different maps look like. This is again on polyhaven.com. It doesn't seem to require a login to download anything, which is really nice. A lot of the free asset places that get stuff like sounds require you to log in on. So diffuse is your base color. That's the main one there. Then AO is Ambient Occlusion. Remember we talked about that last time. It's for self-shadowing. In case you're curious how ambient occlusion works, so ambient lighting is just like background lighting. It doesn't come from anywhere. There's no light source. It's not from the sun. It's just sort of that general light you have. Like even if I turn all the lights off in this room and turn my monitors off, there would still be light in this room, even though the blinds are closed, because light just kind of bounces around. You just sort of get this even light everywhere. And we use ambient light in a video game to avoid just having pitch black, because pitch black is very boring. If you're trying to play a video game and everything's black, it's not very fun. So ambient occlusion is used for shadowing ambient lighting. And so the way that it works, in case you're curious, is for every point on a 3D model, what it does is it casts rays in sort of a hemisphere, 180 degree arc, with a certain max radius that's tunable by the artist. And it sees how many of the rays are blocked by something. And so like if you're in a crevice like here, most of those rays are going to be blocked. Only the ones going straight up will get out. So these will be mostly dark. The ones on the surface just hit the sky. They're going to be mostly white. If they're in a divot, they're going to be hitting the edges of the divot some of the time and going up to the sky the rest of the time. And so what this does, it creates shadowing for ambient light. Remember, ambient light doesn't come from any direction. It's just sort of the light that's in a room somehow, just from bouncing around so much. And so what you do is you get an ambient occlusion map like this. You hook it up to the node, not using the normal map like I did last time. You just hook this up to the ambient occlusion node on the material, and it will add shadows to the surface. And it's basically self-shadowing. And it won't cast a shadow from one object into another. It just is really nice for adding like a little bit of detail. If you just use it a little bit, so like it adds a little bit of realism to it, I guess is a good way of putting it. It looks really nice. This is a triple layered thing. And so what they've done here is they've put together one texture that actually has 3 color channels in it. The red color channel is ambient occlusion. The green color channel is the roughness map, which is this one. And the blue color channel is the metal, which is how metallic the each point is. And so this is a very common trick because a grayscale image like this is red, green, and blue, but you don't actually need all 3 channels, right? And so it's very common to combine 3 texture maps into 1 texture map. And then inside of Unreal Engine, if you had 1 texture map that had all 3 channels in it, you could like pull out the red and hook that up to ambient occlusion, pull out the green and hook it up to whatever, pull out the blue, hook it up to metallic, and things like that. So you use less texture memory that way. And you don't have to have as many art assets and things like that in your world, eating up hard drive space, things like that. So, displacement maps are pretty cool. Displacement maps will actually modify the mesh. So if you have a mesh, it'll actually do this. This is a sphere, but look, the sphere actually comes out. So it actually will do something called a Vertex Shader. A Vertex Shader will actually move the vertices of the sphere up and down. How far up, how far down is based on the displacement map. White means out as far as you can go. Black means in as far as you can go. And how far that means in actual practice, how many centimeters, is configurable by Blender or Surface Painter or whatever tool it is you're using. So they configured it to go out about that much, you know. And it actually, this is different from like a normal map. A normal map says at every point which direction is the surface facing so that light reflects off in a way to add more detail to a surface. A displacement map actually modifies the model itself and will pull parts of the model up and pull parts of the model down. And that's why you don't see this thing being just a sphere. Like even if you had a normal map on it, the outline would be a sphere, but with a displacement map, it actually raises and lowers the surface, which is pretty cool looking. Most of the time you can get away with a normal map. You don't actually need a displacement map in most cases, because displacement maps require you to have a high resolution mesh, or you have to tessellate it, which slows down your runtime. So usually we just use a normal map. So roughness, so this is the roughness of every point on the surface. Combined roughness and ambient occlusion. That's the base color. That's the normal map, which is which direction each of those points is facing in the X, Y, and Z. So you see this one's pointing in the X direction. This one's pointing in the Y direction, you know, that kind of stuff. Okay, and then you can download these in to your hard drive, and then what I've done is imported a bunch of them into a folder, and we're going to make a material out of it. So what do we got? 24 minutes left. Let's make a snow material. I chose snow because I want to do something better than concrete for old Frosty here. So let's make a new snow material from. So I'm going to right click, choose make a new material, and we will call this Frosty Matte. And double click on Frosty Matte, and we are now in here. And I'm going to select these. Nope. So close. There we go. So I'm going to select these. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to select these textures here, and I'm going to drag them over into the material. So it's going to automatically create a texture sample for each of them. It's just a faster way of doing it than doing them one at a time. So I'm going to get all these things queued up here. This out of the way, get a little more room, frosty mount over to the left. Okay, so this is the diffusion map. I probably maybe should have done one at a time. This is the roughness map. So I'm going to click on the roughness map and hook it up into roughness. And the diffuse is another name for base color, so you get hooked up to base color. This one, I'm just hovering over the name so I can see which one it is. This is the displacement map. Alright, let's try that. Oops, did I miss? Okay. This one is obviously the normal map. You can tell it's the normal map because look at the colors on it. Normal maps always look like holograms or something, right? So the normal map is going to hook up to the normal. And what do we got left here? We got here the translucency map. I don't think we have translucency turned on, so we need to turn that on. Over here. So when you have nothing selected in the material editor, this is actually something I probably should have talked about last time. There are different kinds of surfaces you can have, different kinds of properties. One of my favorite ones is called clear coat. Where are you? Right here. So clear coat allows you to have two different layers on a surface. You have the top layer and the bottom layer, and if you've ever seen clear coat on a car, like it's like a little wax layer on top, so you have a different layer, and then below it a different color. And so light will actually reflect off twice off of it. And it creates these really cool looking effects. So we need this to be translucent, maybe. I haven't played with translucency in a while. Let's try this. So we're going to do a translucency map here on opacity. Oh, did I disconnect things? Yeah, I don't remember how to do translucency. So just make it opaque. It's fine. Okay, so now we've got the snow here. So let's just see how this looks. Let's give that a shot. So I hooked up the diffuse map to base color. I hooked up the roughness map to roughness. I hooked up the displacement map to pixel depth offset. Which I don't know if that's right. I haven't played with that before. Normal map to here, and then the translucency to opacity there. Let's see how that works. So Frosty looks the same, and he looks the same because we have not applied Frosty Matte to it yet. So we do this. So might need to compile some shaders. All right, let's see how this looks. It's not too bad. Not too bad. All right. It's looking pretty good. Okay. Now, what if we want to make it tile more or less? Okay. So like, let's say we want the snow powder to be very, very tight or very, very wide. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, starter content, materials. If I put bricks on the wall up here, you see how big these bricks are? You guys see that? I'd want to fix that. I'd want to make it tile more, right? Because this looks really, really tacky. You know what I'm saying? That looks pretty bad. So I want it to repeat more, right? And that's actually something you have to set within the material itself. In most cases, there's a few objects you can apply that you can adjust the tiling on, but usually it's on the material itself. And so that's something that is called UVs. So UV in real life stands for ultraviolet light. It's kind of light that gives you a tan and also skin cancer. In the world of video games, whenever you hear about UV mapping or something like that, it's not people that are going to the beach and getting tanned. UV mapping has to do with how a texture applies to a surface. So, right, you can have like those bricks that we had back over there. You know, you've got a picture on disk of a brick, and it's basically just taking that picture and stretching it out over the entire damn thing. You know, and that's not what you want. You want to apply the texture so that it repeats more often. Okay? And so, you have to add a node called texture coordinate. I think if you actually search for TexCoord, okay, it does work. It's called texture coordinate here, and it's called TexCoord here. I don't know why they have a different name in the two places, but it when you search for it on the material editor here, it's going to be under texture coordinate. And what you're going to do is just hook that up to all of the UV inputs here, because this is going to be adjusting how the textures tile on the surface. So you can have it tile more frequently or less frequently. And then when you have the thing selected, you'll see that it's got this thing here called U tiling and V tiling. And so you can turn these numbers up or down and make them tile more frequently or less frequently as a result. So you can see the smears here. We turn that up to 10 and 10. Then you see there's a lot more spheres. Okay. So if we save that, the texture will appear 10 times more often on the surface. So if we come over here and look at Frosty now, you'll see that there's a lot more stuff on it, right? And if we were to cut this down to like 5, save it, you'll see that these start spreading out a little more. See? And so, like, you know, if we did the same thing for this brick texture here, if we set we'd probably actually change the horizontal and the vertical tiling differently, right? Because this thing's really stretched out wide. So we'd probably change the horizontal tiling to 20 and the vertical tiling to like 4 or something like that, and try and get the bricks kind of repeating. So that means it'll repeat 20 times across the surface instead of once. And it'll repeat 5 times down instead of once. Do you guys understand? So this is how often the texture will repeat on the surface. Okay. So if we were to modify the brick, we could add a texture coordinate node there, and it's going to be actually kind of annoying because these things are usually pretty big. Let's see if I can get around here. Okay. So yeah, they've got text coordinates here, 1, 1, 1. And so if I change this to be 24 and 20 and 4 and 20 and 4, this is actually just for the noise, I think. I think this isn't even for the brick. Okay, here's the brick pattern. The brick pattern doesn't even have tiling at all on it. So we will add a TexCoord here. And we will have the bricks tile 20 times horizontally and 4 times vertically. And let's save that. And then, that's interesting. Look at that. That's funny. There must be another one in here too somewhere. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we'd have to change all these things, but that's the general idea, right? They'd have to feed into that as well. And this one we'd also have to change to 24. They really need to just make variables for those things, you know, and make them a little bit more easy to work with. Okay, and so there we go. So you can see that our brick texture now has, let's move the camera speed up to 3. So you can see the brick texture now repeats 20 times across the surface here, right? So from the left side to the right side, it repeats 20 times. From the top to the bottom, it repeats 4 times. And it looks a lot more reasonable now than it did before. Now the trouble is, if I apply this on some other surface, then the tiling's all going to be screwed up because it repeats 20 times across the surface, and it's going to look really weird and awkward. So the better way of doing this is to do something called a material parameter that allows you to tweak it sort of individually. So you can see what looks good here doesn't look good here. So that's why, in general, they just leave it at 1. It's okay looking, I guess. Yeah. All right. So what do we got? 13 minutes left. Ship it. Looks amazing. Yeah, thank you. All right. So yeah, the snow looks pretty good, I think. It's pretty decent snow, I guess. Right? Not bad. I could probably make it shinier, huh? Let's see if we can make it shiny. Let's just give that a shot and see what that looks like. So I'm using the roughness map for roughness and specular, which is not a good idea. I just want to see how that looks. Better. All right. Specular, not roughness. What does roughness default to? Like 0.5 or something. So you can see that the normal map here is making it look like it's a little bit wrinkled. You guys all see that? Right there? So it looks like the thing has a little bit of detail on it, a little bit of character, right? True snow should be a little reflective. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe I'll use the roughness map for roughness and just, pixel depth offset. It's going to be weird. It's to add areas of kind of shininess to it. It's using subsurface. Default. Putting it back on the default here. All right. Ooh, that looks different. Don't eat that snow, let me tell you. Alright, I'll put it back on subsurface scattering. Yeah, so for the subsurface color, let's start off with that being white. So I'll explain what subsurface color is in a second after I'm happy with it. Yeah. Not bad. Not bad looking at all. Alright, so if I set the subsurface color to be red, let's just see what that does to it. So do you see how there's like two different kinds of reflections coming off that? There's the upper layer, which is white, and the bottom layer, which is red. So what subsurface scattering mean? Oh, am I doing clear code or am I doing subsurface? I'm doing subsurface, I think, right? Yeah. So so what's happening is that the inner part of the snowman is solid red, and then on the surface is white. And so light can penetrate the outer layer based on this opacity map here, and it bounces around on the inside picking up red, and then it comes out. And so it's kind of like when you shine a flashlight through your hand. If you try modeling somebody's hand as opaque, it actually doesn't look good. And that was a problem that plagued 3D graphics and 3D games for a number of years. If you look at what old, 90s era renders looked like. They looked pretty bad. It looked like people were made of horrible mannequins or plastic and things like that. Save that. And 90s era cover art poser. Human, what's it called? Create human clay. Yes, this was state of the art in the 90s, and and there's a software program called Poser that would allow you to make images of people, and you can move them around and stuff like that. And it was just a very distinctive art style, and it just looks absolutely horrendous. You can see the reflection is very shiny. The person's, they're obviously made out of plastic, and it just looks really bad. And so there is Subsurface Scattering human skin. So when you do, this is actually a render, right? And that looks a lot better than human clay. Because what happens is when you have a surface like this, is that light actually hits your skin. It bounces around a little bit, then it comes out. And yeah, that's really turned up. It looks like the person's made out of jello on this one. But what we had to do back in the day was we would have to put lights up people's noses, because noses turned into these inky black pits of darkness, and it looked really bad. It looked really unnatural, because in real life your nose is slightly translucent. It's not as translucent as this alien jello human here, but in reality your nose flaps are a little bit translucent. And so if you look over here, you can see there's a little bit of light on the inside of the nose that looks realistic. So what we had to do in cutscenes back in the day is we would actually stick lights up people's noses and light the insides of their nostrils a little bit, so it didn't look like they just had these pits of inky darkness in the middle of it. So realistic skin these days involves turning on subsurface scattering, which means that light hits the skin, bounces around on the inside, and then comes out. And it looks a lot better now than it used to in the past. The guy who invented subsurface scattering came to UCSD and gave a talk on subsurface scattering. That's how I learned about it. And it was fascinating. It was a great talk. They used it for things like jade and things like that. It's not just human skin. Yeah, here we go. So like light in the olden days would just bounce off the surface and it looked plastic. But with subsurface scattering, it you get different, more realistic looking reflections and things like that. Okay, so subsurface scattering, jade. So you can see it creates very, very beautiful, very realistic looking images. And so you can enable that in Unreal Engine by turning on subsurface shading here, and then that allows you to set the inside color and the outside color. So maybe I should actually do this backwards. Maybe the outside color should be pure white, and the inside color should be this snow chocolate chip pattern. Let's see how that looks. Not bad. Not bad. Look at that. Yeah, you can look at that texture you can see on it. I don't know if it's coming through on Discord, but like it's actually not bad. It's a little bit dirtier than like. Oh, it's a snowman, so I guess it's okay. Oh, that's the specular. Let's turn that off. Maybe I'll just hardcode the spec. Let's try that. So I'm going to hardcode the specular value to like shiny, maybe. fly over there. I think it'd look better with per pixel shininess. It's okay, I guess. Maybe we'll hook that up to metallic too. Let's make it 80% metallic. And you're not, remember, metallic's supposed to just be 0 or 1, but you can feasibly pass it a number from 0 and 1, like in that area, and it turns into something called a quasi-metal. You can see it looks really kind of weird. Like, things aren't really supposed to be plastic and metal at the same time. So, yeah, it looks pretty bad. Looks like it's made out of, like, nylon or something. Let's not do that. Okay, so that's the general process that I want you guys to go through for your next homework assignment. Basically, go on to here, go on to Polyhaven, and find Polyhaven, find a texture that you like. It could be anything, doesn't have to be for a snowman. Just go around, find something you like, and download the different maps for it. Book pattern, that might actually be useful for me. Tile. And you can 3D visualize it. So this one, does it have a displacement map? Maybe it does. Yeah, look at that divot right there. So there you go. Yeah, it's got a displacement map. So if you look at that, you'll see the displacement map. Dark area means it goes down. White areas means it comes up. So that actually breaks up the outline. That's the main use of a displacement map, is that whenever you have like a perfectly spherical outline on something that's supposed to be brick, it destroys the illusion that you actually have bricks there. Most of the time, normal maps will take you most of the way. So if you want, you can look at all the different layers they have. Ambient Occlusion, you can see the areas in the grout are darker because more of the beams they cast out are hitting the tiles. This is both roughness and ambient occlusion. This is ambient occlusion and roughness and metal. Again, that's the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel. So if you download one of these, it has all three. What you do is pull out the red channel for ambient occlusion. I don't think mine had ambient occlusion, did it? No. So yeah, you'd pull out the red channel for ambient occlusion. You'd pull out the green channel for, what's the other one? Roughness. So you'd pull out the blue channel and hook it up to roughness, and you'd pull out the green channel and hook that up to metal. So you just need one texture sample instead of three if you do it that way. Okay, any questions? So I'd like for you guys to make some sort of interesting material in Unreal Engine using the maps provided by Polyland. I want to see a texture coordinate node in there. I would like to see you tile them, not just use 1, tile it. Maybe apply it to the wall. That might be an interesting thing. So make a wall texture. So do I want to apply the changes? Ooh. It's gonna be saved now, but whatever. Okay, so I'd like for you to make a wall texture, and that's going to require you to use the UV, the texture coordinates fed into the UV. Okay, and just pull in the stuff from Polyhaven, sorry, and yep, you guys understand? You'll have till Tuesday to do it, so it's not too onerous, I don't think. You guys understand? Download the maps, make a new mirror, make a new, if you right click and just right click, new material, and then import the textures, hook them up, put them on the wall, and then you'll need to use a TexCoord node to change the tiling on it to make it look good. Cool. So this is still part of the art side of things. It's actually kind of programming. For those of you wondering why we're not doing programming, this is actually programming. It's visual programming. Like this is click and drag stuff, but this is actually programming. What you're actually creating here is a program called a shader. And a shader, you might have seen shaders before, compiling shaders. You might have seen that before. What a shader is a program, and there's two different kinds of shaders. One shader is called a Vertex Shader, and that moves the mesh up and down, like the displacement map that we saw. It's a shader that basically moves the individual vertices away from the center in an amount based on the displacement map. This here, what you're creating, is called a pixel shader, or fragment shader is the more technical term for it. And a fragment shader, a pixel shader, I'll just call it a pixel shader because people know what pixels are. A pixel shader basically says, for every point on the surface of Frosty, what color should I make? And it's a program. It's a program. It uses the base color, and then based on the roughness and specularity, it'll add light to it, or shininess. Based on the opacity map, it'll allow light through it. We're doing subsurface scattering, so it actually bounces light off of it twice. A white outer shell and a more detailed inner shell. The light bounces based on the normal map at that point. So if you actually were to look at this would be like quite a lengthy program. That would look like a lot of linear algebra and a lot of multiplies and dot products and cross products and all this kind of stuff. But you don't have to worry about that because you're just clicking and dragging stuff. So Unreal Engine does the heavy lifting of the math for you. All you need to tell it is how white is it, how rough is it, how metallic is it, that kind of stuff. So it is programming mixed with art. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun because you can't really go wrong. You know, even if you end up with something horrific, absolutely horrific. A lot of times it looks cool anyway. You know, it's the Bethesda effect, right? Like you have something that's horribly broken, but then people love it, so you just slap a sticker on it and call it a feature, and go home. You know, roll around in your bed of money. Okay. Not a bug, it's a feature. So this is your assignment. Okay. So I will see you guys on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. If you have any questions, as always, reach out to me in the Help Center or just message me on Discord. Okay. Cool. Okay. I'll see you guys.